And a very big welcome back to Mobile Rolling. This is week 3 of our podcast series. We're back here at House of Chow. Just a reminder to everyone that House of Chow is still open here on Hutt Street, serving takeaway food throughout this COVID-19 crisis. So make sure you give one of the best Chinese restaurants in South Australia a visit here at House of Chow, serving takeaway at the moment. I'm joined by Walter Bulyga here today. We'll talk to Wally in a minute. Just a reminder to all of our viewers that next week, George Fiacci will be on the show in an uncut interview, and we're giving you the opportunity to ask George questions. So make sure you visit www.mobilerolling.net to ask George your questions, and we'll ask him next week on the show. Well, Wally, it's fantastic to have you on today. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Lachie. How are you? Good?
Yeah, very good. We'll get into your career in harness racing. Now, obviously, you're the course photographer at a majority of the tracks around the state. Tell us how you got involved with harness racing.
Well, it was all part of working with Bill Atkins, the racing photographer. He used to have an office just around the corner here in Pirie Street, and in fact in Hutt Street was their last office.
Yep.
And that's while I was studying dentistry, when we used to do we used to film Stewards films using 16mm film cameras.
Yep.
And that was just on Saturdays, and I just started doing more and more work, and then missed working at Wavell, unfortunately. And that was just about the time that Globe Derby started. Then started picking up those meetings, and it got to the stage I was doing about 10 or 12 meetings a week across all 3 codes.
It's fantastic. So what year roughly did you start working at Globe Derby?
Probably about 73, I think. Yeah, 1973.
That was basically when Wavell finished and when Globe Derby took over. So
just missed out on going to Wavell.
Now you work at all different sorts of tracks, of course, Port Pirie, Kapunda. List some of the tracks you've worked at over the years.
Kangaroo Island, Mindry Hallerton, Laura, Jamestown, Pirie, Whyalla. Regularly went up, a typical week back then was Friday night, drive up to Port Augusta, stay the night, do the Port Augusta races, come back, do Globe Derby, then Sunday Murray Bridge Trots, then Monday Globe Derby, Monday night the dogs, Tuesday somewhere I'm sure, Wednesday the races, Wednesday night the dogs, Thursday night the dogs, Friday Pirie again, and so it went for, I think, I didn't have a holiday for 17 years at one stage.
Yeah.
And of course Easter, Easter is no holiday if you're in the racing game. So.
Yeah, exactly, just travelling around. Now what are the tracks you work at now currently?
Just Globe Derby now.
Just Globe Derby,
finished with the greyhounds. Haven't worked at the thoroughbreds for about 15 or 20 years, I think now. Probably over 20 years. But I did those for a very long time as well.
What's been probably one of your favourite tracks to visit over the years out of all the time you've been working?
Oh, I never minded the Gawler Dogs because of the, it's in such a nice setting. It's alongside the Gawler River, terrific row of gum trees all the way around side. And a good size for a meeting as well, not too many people. When you work there all the time, the fewer the people, the better, really, because you only got to work your way through them. But I always enjoyed it there. And Globe Derby, when it was big, was terrific. Had that buzz for sure. When we had bookmakers at courses, it's hard to understand. It's hard for people who've never seen a track full of bookmakers and hardcore punters what the buzz was like.
Yeah,
it's not quite the same queuing up at You Bet, sadly.
We're going to talk about some of the equipment you've used over the years now. What sort of cameras have you used over the years?
Oh, my God. Well, we used to use film cameras, so, 10 shots on a roll and don't waste it. So it's quite funny because, I learnt pretty much after a few years you could get the horse on the line every time. And watching young kids today, they start the motor drive at the home turn and take a couple of 100 shots and still miss it. I used to do the photo finish for a long time. So I used to do the photo finish for actually developing film, close the door. In the dark, fumbling around, get out the film, develop it, print it, put the wet print down a tube to the judge and have a look at that. So, and then of course, as digital came in, it was just obvious that was, that was going to swamp the film. Yet in the last couple of years, film cameras have just become a hipster thing. So it's coming back. So luckily I've kept some of my better ones. But pretty much every couple of years there's an investment in new cameras because quality just gets better and better. So especially with the lighting at Globe Derby.
Exactly. Now we're going to talk. What are some of the differences between the cameras you used back then to the cameras you use now?
Well, you just had to you had to have such a mindset, because you had to wind on the film, cock the shutter, focus manually. It just took so much concentration.
Yeah.
And you had to plan a shot. So if something was coming up and you had 2 frames left, that means at some stage you're going to have to quickly, finish one off, lick it, roll it, put it in your pocket, get the other one, swap the reels over, and managed to do that almost one-handed in the dark at the end. Whereas now you load up with a couple of chips. I mean, last night, it took me 4 hours to edit last night.
Yeah.
I reckon it took about 450 shots.
Yeah.
Like that would have been 40 rolls of film. It would cost us. Couldn't afford to do it.
Yeah. What are some of the things you do to ensure you get that perfect shot every time?
Quality of lenses.
Yeah.
That's really important. The light, nighttime shooting during the day is anyone can do it.
Yeah.
More or less, especially if you ask them. But nighttime is a completely different thing. The lighting at Globe Derby is not what it should be. I mean, even recently when we were at Wavell, the change from the previous meeting at Wavell was absolutely dramatic.
Yeah.
So you've got to get really expensive, fast lenses. You haven't got much depth of field. It's practice. I've hired a lot of photographers over the years, and they're all professionals until they come to the track, and then somehow they just fade away. I've had guys just stand there with the camera in their hands and watch the animals go past, and why didn't you take a photo? Forgot, that sort of stuff. Working in the rain as well. Luckily, a couple of new bodies I bought just a few months ago are pretty much waterproof.
Yep.
Whereas the other camera I had with me a couple of weeks ago when we had the wet night actually started failing towards the end of the night.
Yeah.
So it's like the Grand Prix they had here when all the advertiser guys, every one of their cameras failed.
Yeah.
Because they had to work in the wet. And they wear out. There's always dust. I give it to my tech, and he says, yours cameras are in the worst condition of anyone we get, because they're all in studios or they're doing a wedding. I'm outside
outdoors in the elements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about some of the racing you've seen over the years now.
Yep.
If you had to really hang it down, what have been some of your favourite horses you've seen over the years?
Horses, Smoking Up without a doubt, and also was a bit of a favourite because it was driven by Lance Justice, who I used to know when he was just a young kid, basically doing the clerical coursework at the Gawler Thoroughbreds with his brother John.
Yep.
So it was great to see them go from just being a couple of workers at the track to being major trainer with one of the best horses.
Yep.
So I find out not so much the horses but the drivers. It's I'm sure if you scattered the names on the field and got everyone to drive something else, the results would be fairly different as well. Just see some have just got that natural feel, some are trying to force the horse around, others, Danny Hill I have to mention, just seems so relaxed, and the horses and she said to me that I don't have to do anything, the horses do it, whereas everyone else seems to be fighting. So some horses are absolutely spectacular, but they wouldn't do it unless someone was just, giving them that urge, giving them the right rein at the right time. So I couldn't discount having a driver. A horse is only as good as its driver, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And the driver, of course, does make a massive difference. Now, you've seen some big race meetings over the years and some big things happen at racetracks. What's been one of your best memories at a racetrack?
Oh, gee, what that I can say on TV? Look, I've seen it all. Fires at Morphettville, fires at Cheltenham, floods, snakes, kookaburras, you're out in the wild, so you see all this sort of stuff. I'll tell you one thing that really stuck in my mind. Robert Stigwood from RSO came to Cheltenham with, let's call her his secretary.
Yep.
And she was wearing the smallest pair of knickers and a piece of cheesecloth. And it absolutely stopped the betting ring. So much so that the chairman, David Coles, came along and said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go and get dressed. So that stuck in my mind. Evacuating Cheltenham after a fire, that was another memorable meeting. So, I mean, and some of the characters that used to go, not as many people now that are real characters, like have a presence. A guy called Hollywood used to always shove up with his bag of money and showed it off after a big win. Then he got knocked on the head on the train going home and lost that. God. I'd have to think about it for hours, but there were a couple of things that really stuck in my mind.
Yeah, and that's
Johnny Letts driving. That was someone else. That was something great to see.
Yeah,
like a good driver, he could just get the horse on his shoulders and run over the line with it. It just made such a difference. If he wanted it to win, it was going to win.
It's funny, we were just talking before we went on air about some race calls that have happened over the years. Of course, you going to the Gallops, Greyhounds and Trocks and working at all those venues, you would have seen many different race callers over the years. What have been some of your favourite calls or callers that have graced the broadcast box over the years of the tracks you've worked at?
Well, I think there's the two famous ones, Jimmy Jakes and the Strepsil Day. That was pretty good. That gave us some good PR. And Hilton Donaldson and the Seagull exercise. That was another memorable one. I think a couple of the Melbourne Cup calls also pretty dramatic. People not calling a horse at all, and then the only time they bring it up is when it actually crossed the line, like just ignoring it. Or not naming any names, but callers that pick up the racebook don't turn the page and call a race with dogs that aren't actually racing out there. It's quite entertaining. So, Jim Jakes, he's an absolute legend. And I want to say Ray Fewings, he could make a maiden with two dogs sound like the Adelaide Cup on occasions. He certainly knows how to do it. And we are in the entertainment business. It's something people forget. And, racing's great, but it is entertainment. I think we should put a bit more attention to the way we're running the business, as this is entertainment, and there's got to be entertainment at every level.
Yeah. As we've seen recently on Facebook, you've started putting up your photos as examples and also adding some words and some journalism to it almost. So just a little bit about that. You're a bit of a wordsmith.
Yeah, well, I spent 9 years at university, so I've written a few essays in my time, and I did it first just up at Port Pirie. They had one of their big meetings there, a charity meeting.
Yep.
And people really appreciate it. And then straight away we had the coronavirus thing, and a lot of them said this, that's the only feedback we're really getting. So I thought, all right, you're missing out. And of course, again, it's not just the results. You can look at them anywhere. So putting in a bit more of a story, what else is happening, trying to keep the people connected to being at the track, because it's a different thing to sitting at home, where as soon as the race is finished, it's just cut off. You're straight off to Tokyo or Norway, wherever they're broadcasting from. So, and that's what being at the track is about.
Yeah,
it's not just watching. It's an environment of people, and there's information you'll get. You never see a horse parade on TV, but you see it at the track, you've got a lot more of an idea. It's worth keeping an ear out. So bringing all that together, and just showing off some of the other photos, and a lot of people don't, if you don't order a photo, you don't see it quite often. So I thought, all right, the Gawler Cup was a good one. Where I took that photo of what's it called, that one,
Grey Maverick.
Thank you. Yeah. Again, and beautiful light up there as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Great light, a very light surface track that throws a lot of light up.
Like a sun beaming down the track.
Yeah, exactly. It was perfect. It was just perfect. And again, new camera shoots up, about 14 frames a second, so I managed to get him up in the air.
Yep.
And he was leading by a mile, and I backed him at 26s, so I had a vested interest in that one.
Yeah. You can find all of those articles that Wally does on the SA Harness Facebook group and the Harness Racing SA Facebook page. Now, Wally, we're going to talk about some of the stuff you do outside of harness racing now. Of course, you're not just a photographer at the races. You do a whole bunch of, blogging stuff outside of racing. Tell us what you do there.
Well, I've always advertised myself as an industrial commercial photographer. In fact, we're here in the House of Chow, and there's some of the things I've done up there, the American Express Awards. So I've worked for American Express, for Mercedes, McDonald's, doing a lot of food. Food and wine's big. I've been up in planes, down mines, on boats and cars. It's a fantastic job for that. You get to see and you meet people that you just wouldn't get to see. A lot of dinners. I do a lot of work for the Australian Institute of Company Directors. So I go to a lot of their speeches, which are very business related. Photographed Ida Buttrose there. So it's, a lot of people specialise. Adelaide, you can't, because it's just so small. You can't just do food. You can't just do cars. You really have to be, serviceable at least, and hopefully good at so many different things. You just don't know what you're going to do. Yeah. And I've done a lot in and around the mining industry as well. I've worked up in Queensland, working up some mines and some explosive plants up there. So and being, a lot of it's outdoors work as well, which is a great feed in for the racing game. Yeah. Because it's cloudy, it's sunny, it's in the morning, it's in the afternoon. You don't know what you're going to do, and you just got to find that shot, regardless. You usually don't have any time to set up, and it's a skill then you can then apply. And plus the way you handle people, which is, it's like a vet, as they say. You spend 90% of the time treating the person, 10% treating the animal. It's a bit like that. Yeah, exactly. Because you're a photographer, but you're a salesman at the same time. You're trying to sell your photos. So customer service is key. Yeah, exactly. You've got to pat people on the back. You've got to tell them they're beautiful. Yeah. You also brought some drinks for us today. Yeah. Just a little bit more about that. Well, this is a little adventure I took out, and that was starting a brewery. Yeah. There we go. So I started a brewery, Croydon Brewery,
Yep.
when I used to live at Croydon. It's odd, it's a Methodist suburb and there's no pubs, unlike every other pub in Adelaide, there's no pubs there. So I started home brewing and then I put the beer into a competition at the Tanunda show and won a silver medal. And then I made the dumbest mistake of my life. I thought, beauty, I'll do this commercially. And so we brewed up quite a bit. It's a Belgian style beer, so it's not a yellow lager, it's a black, solid, high alcohol beer.
Yep.
Perfect for this weather. And most of it's been aged for about 5 years because it's got a high alcohol content, so you can keep it. So if anyone at the Trots wants a 6-pack, give me a call.
Awesome. And if they want to get a hold of one of your photos, tell them how can you get a hold of you?
Directly on phone, I think. So, actually, my email is the best because then it sits there and I can go back to it when I've got time. And that's my last name backwards. So that's agylub@gmail.com. That's the best. All my phones, 0413 521 747.
Get those details up on screen for you as well. Well, Wally, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on today. It's been an education, that's for sure. You've experienced a lot of different scenarios at the racetrack, and it was great to see those come to light today. Thank you for joining us today on Mobile Rolling, another great episode in the books. We hope you can join us next week when we have George Fiarchi on the show. Make sure you forward your questions, to www.mobilerolling.net, and we'll ask George about 10 to 15 questions next week on the show. A big thank you again to House of Chow, and we'll see you next week here on Mobile Rolling.